Safety Subcommittee meeting. I now call this meeting to order. I'll bang that again because I like to. Please be advised that FATV is conducting audio and video recording of this meeting. I ask that anyone in the audience who is recording please stand and identify themselves for the record. At this time, I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. And we have several petitions before us. The first one tonight that we'll take up is petition 195-23. Councillor Fleming, on behalf of several residents, employees, and non-residents of Fitchburg, a petition to add streetlights or roundabout to the intersection of North Street, John Fitch Highway, and Pearl Hill Road, John Fitch Highway, to mitigate traffic concerns, meaning accidents and pedestrian crossing safety during daytime hours. With the increase in traffic, this discussion needs to take place before a tragedy occurs. It is before us, and tonight we have Sergeant Boudreau, and I see DPW Commissioner Mr. Erickson as well. So thank you. Sergeant Boudreau.
Good evening, councilors. I actually didn't do a report on this. I know there's the Commissioner could probably speak more to this. There's current design plans that the state has done for the city for a roundabout at this area. So I know that's in the works. I don't know about time frames, so I didn't do a report on this. It was would be duplicitous, because we're already in the works of looking at possibly doing a roundabout. And as far as street lighting, I think that would be up to the council if they wanted to pay for extra street lighting there at this time.
And just to add to that, so we were funded through the ARPA funds that the city received to execute the design of a roundabout at that location. So we used one of our on-call engineering consultants, Fuss and O'Neill, who put together 5 concept plans for that area. I'd shared that set of concept plans with public safety and gotten some feedback. So at this point, we're at the next step where we've got to essentially pick one of those concepts and move forward with it. We're not in a super big rush to finalize the design, just simply because we don't have any construction funding lined up for the project. So it's one of those designs that's likely going to sit on a shelf somewhere until we're able to get that money together. Just based on the plans that I've seen, I would estimate construction costs to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 to $2 million, but it includes complete reconfiguration of the intersection along with traffic signage, line striping, upgraded lighting, curbing, etc. I mean, the whole 9 yards. So that's where that project stands right now.
And I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, if we end up redoing that, will that take out that middle curbing that serves as kind of the median between the lanes of traffic?
It would. There'd be some islands to help guide traffic into and out of the roundabout. The roundabout itself is a much larger diameter than, say, the roundabout at Main and River Street or at Rollstone and Electric. Okay. It's more similar in size to the roundabout that's on the other end of John Fitch Highway at Mechanic Street. But in any case, there'll be some islands outside of just the circle in the middle to help guide those lanes of traffic into and out of the roundabout.
Okay. And time frame, is this a year out, 2 years out, 5 years out, or you don't have any way of knowing?
I mean, the design itself can be completed in as little as another month or two. It's really the construction funding that's outstanding right now. That would take more than an entire year's worth of Chapter 90 funds to construct if we were to build it just out of Chapter 90. So it really depends on whether we can find some other source of funding for it or not. If we find that in a year, then maybe we can get it built in a year. If we can't find that money for several years, then it could take several years or more to get built.
Okay. What would your recommendation be then on, do we hold this? Do we grant it with the hopes of receiving funding? I mean, if funding is going to be a null issue this year or into 2025, do we put this on the back burner and ask for it to come up again, or does it need to be in petition through public safety, knowing that it's already in the works?
I don't think it necessarily needs to be a petition through public safety in order to move forward. The concept of a roundabout actually came out of a study that was done, I believe, by MRPC back in 2014. After I think a petition was passed to look at the concept. but I'm not entirely certain. I'd have to go back and look at some records. But in any case, DPW understands that that intersection is challenging, the sightlines are poor, it's not safe for pedestrians, the lighting is not great, and a solution needs to be implemented. And regardless of whether this petition passes or not, I mean, we've spent some good money on getting that design finalized. The concepts that we have are good concepts, and I'd love to continue moving forward with it if we can find the money, regardless of whether there's a passed petition or not. So, similar to what I recommend during the Public Works Committee meetings, I mean, if the committee would like, they could pass the petition subject to available funding, or table it indefinitely or withdraw it. I mean, that's entirely up to you folks.
Thank you. Councilor Schultz.
I was just going to say, I'm on the Public Works Committee, and we could add that to every petition we have that, can we do it according to availability of funds? So I think that goes without saying. I don't think we need to add that. I think we can just grant it and hope that we either get a grant or some new funding source comes into play. So yeah. I would just say pass it as is and hope for funding in a year or two or three. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Is that a motion? Or
that's a motion, yes.
Councilor Van
Second.
Hazinga. Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
All right, I thought you were seconding.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to pass the petition. Are we adding the caveat based on funding, or are we just passing the petition?
Just pass the petition.
Just pass the petition, and I just had a quick question since we can discuss with the second. I feel like viewers might be curious as to how come Fitchburg State University doesn't pitch in for anything that intersects with their campus overlay, and so I'm just going to put that out there. In terms of funding, does Fitchburg State University contribute at all towards any of the streetlights or the traffic issues on parts of Fitchburg that do overlay their campus?
They have contributed in the past to various street lighting projects. I'm not sure about paving projects.
Okay.
And I know that there was talk several years ago about Fitchburg State partnering with the city to get sidewalks on I guess it would be the northern end of North Street done, which would be basically between their campus and John Fitch Highway, where we're talking about the roundabout. I don't know where that stands, if that offer is still on the table, but that would be a good discussion to have. It couldn't hurt.
Thank you.
Councilor Fleming?
Yes, I just wanted to add that the initial petition, 99% of those signatures were Fitchburg State employees, just so you know.
Interesting.
Wow.
Thank you. And Councilor Van Hazinga?
So yeah, the Fitchburg State University has worked with the city on different projects on North Street, on Ringe Road by the McKay School, various, and I've talked to them at great length about putting in a sidewalk on the end of North Street by John Fitch Highway. And they're very interested. It's just a question of available funds for them, too. Right now, in the last couple of years since COVID, they have been under a funding crunch and just haven't had the resources to invest in sort of these kinds of projects with the city. They're more than willing to partner. It's just a question of finding the funds. And right now, they're in a crunch and just not able to do it. So as we've had a previous discussion about the Cherish Act, that the state school system has been underfunded, and they just don't have the resources that they had at one time because the funding continues to decline, and now there's been a period of lower enrollment, so they just don't have the resources to contribute to this at this time. Maybe that changes in the future, hopefully, but I don't think we should plan on sharing the cost with them.
Yeah.
All right, I have a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Next, petition 203-23. Remove the current no parking area on the east side of Snow Street, that's Snow Street East from Cherry Street to opposite Union Street, and replacing it with time limit parking, 2 hour, to add 10 new parking spots. Sergeant Boudreau.
So, councilors, this came as a request from Mr. Muniz that's here. The Friends of the Abolitionist Park Board came to the city. They were asking to see if we could give them some handicap parking for the park and maybe some additional parking. So the commissioner, myself, and Gary Withington, when he was in his position, went over there, what was that, about probably close to a year ago. We looked at the street. We came up with some ideas where the DPW is going to redo the sidewalks, do some compliant ADA ramps. We found that the city's right-of-way with the property that's across the street, the empty lot with the boulders that are there, we have those boulders partially sit on city property. We can push those back. The DPW can pave that. We came up with a plan to be able to put 10 parking spaces on that side of the road. That we can do, what we're asking is to take the now no parking that's there. We'll make those 10 spots, and with council approval, we would make them 2-hour parking. So when they have an event, they have room to park, for the park. And if we do it 2 hours, then we're not going to have people that'll just go park over there and leave their cars there for weeks at a time and take up those parking spaces. Along with that, by widening the road, we have enough room. Chief Martineau's already signed off on it. We can add 3 handicap parking spaces and 2 loading zones in front of those on the side of the park. So we'll pick up 10 parking spots on the opposite side. We'll get 3 handicap spots, 2 loading zone spots. Talking with all of us and Mr. Muniz, we're thinking with the loading zone, it gives 2 additional parking spots, but it also gives a spot for if there's an event there for them to drop off equipment, anything like that, or if you had a dignitary coming in to speak, it would give a spot to have some to let them park while they go to do whatever they have to do, and then they're going to leave. So that's our plan. The DPW is doing the sidewalks, and the commissioner can talk about that. All I'm really asking in this petition for is I need the no parking taken away on that side of the road and make that 2-hour parking zone. So that's what the petition is actually for. But I wanted to give you the background of everything else that we're attempting to do over there.
Mr. Nunes, would you like to speak?
Thank you, councilors. David Tebow Munoz, as you know, my students founded the park 2017, raised about $100,000, a little bit more than $100,000 to get it to where it's at now. We have large events every Juneteenth, every fall. Fall events are about 75 people. The Juneteenth events are between 100 and 300. But we also do programming. Dr. Day, who's on our board, and Simone Blake, who passed, who was on our board, would hold alpha classes, adult basic education classes there, a smaller group. We had Afro-Puerto Rican drumming, which we're going to be doing again this spring. So a smaller group of parents being able to drop their children off to learn how to dance and to drum. We might be having a yoga class there, right? So those are kinds of smaller events, I think, that along with folks who are coming from outside of the neighborhood to visit could easily park. Actually, I'm thinking, every time I think about parking, I think of Councilor Fleming, because one of the Juneteenth, she had this great spot, right, close to the front, but the pastor who was giving the opening prayer at our event is handicapped. And so we needed to have that space. And I remember we had this conversation, like, oh wait, I'm sorry, I got to give this space, for the pastor. But I understand it really well now. Right, yeah, because there's not a lot. If you aren't familiar, there's parking on the left side of the street coming down Snow up until Union Street, and then after that there isn't any parking. So this will be really helpful for visitors to the park and. For the program, particularly the small programming that we do. And of course, the handicap spaces for the larger programming. Appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Councilor Fleming, do you have anything to add?
No, as I say at every meeting, I totally, with handicap spots, we need them.
Okay.
We need them.
Councilor Boschman?
Yeah. Paul Boschman. The only thing that bothers me about this is we gave $150,000 to Trevor, the information technology guy over here, to move a wire on Cherry Street over 10 feet, because they're predicting big construction on North Street, that big project of, 190 units. They're also predicting another big project on the corner of Main Street and Day Street, 112 or 150 units. And so I really think we should hold off on the parking to find out what's going to happen there, because they may need the land and they're going to need places for them to park their cars or do construction if they take it, if they start doing construction at all. So I can't understand what the hurry is until we actually know what's going to happen. Because if we don't spend $150,000 on Cherry Street to move the wire, well, the city can really use the money back. I mean, we're digging up Cherry Street to move a copper wire for the fire station because of construction on North Street, the right-of-way. So that's the only thing that bothers me, the whole thing, is I think we're moving too fast there. I think we should slow down on the parking until we actually know what's going to happen on North Street and what's going to happen on the corner of Day and Main with the construction. That's how I feel.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you. Councilor Schultz?
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of this. I spend some time at the Abolitionist Park, and there's really no parking there to speak of. And if we're to wait for years to see if the construction is going to happen in that area, we could be waiting years. And in the meantime, we can change things later on if we have to, but let's have the parking now for the people that want to visit the park. I mean, I don't see that we're moving too fast. Like you said, Sergeant Boudreau, it's already been a year since you visited that spot, and we're still waiting. So I'm certainly in favor of this petition. Thank you.
Sergeant Boudreau?
If I may, Council, to speak to what Councilor Boschman is just alluded to, that did come up in our conversations. There's two different issues over there. The sidewalk and the ADA ramps that we're doing, that's not going to change whether there's a building put there or not. The rest of this, that's kind of what we talked about. If they start building next year and that takes a year and a half or 2 years, we can change these parking regulations. The park would lose those spots if need be, but I think we went to a meeting probably 2 years ago about this building, and they haven't done anything yet. So I can let the DPW Commissioner can speak about this too. When we looked at this, the DPW is not going to spend a lot of money to put a little pavement on the other side of the road. We're not doing huge improvements to put these 10 spots. It's basically going to be moving the boulders and doing a little bit of paving there, not much. So we're not spending a lot of money there to add these 10 spots that would be wasted, I think, down the road. I think it would be a good project for the park, and they need parking. So that's why we brought it forward.
Councilor Van Hezingen?
Thank you. So I'm in favor of this. I think there is a demand for parking there for users of the park, but also for residents of the neighborhood. It is a densely developed neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of off-street parking for all the properties. And I went back and checked through my emails, and I actually spoke at length with a resident on Snow Street 2 years ago. Council Fleming happened to be on vacation, so I picked that one up for a little bit and did some of this legwork too, and found that, talking to the previous DPW commissioner, there was room to expand the parking there, and that was something that resident was very adamant would help improve the neighborhood and make it possible to have visitors to properties there and people who live there. I think this parking is proposed to go in the city's right-of-way, so even if the building that has been approved, and it's approximately 150 units on that site, Councilor Boschman, would not be located in the right-of-way. It couldn't be. So it would not change the footprint of the approved building. It would complement it, and if we add 150 apartments on that lot, we're going to need more parking in that neighborhood as it is. And so I think any work we can do to expand the available parking there, the better. So I think this is something that works now with the park and the residents, and I think it's something that will work in the future if we have that lot be approved.
Thank you. Councilor Cragan?
Sure. So the general public may not know this, but the Abolitionist Park is unique in that it is a park that celebrates, commemorates, and explains Fitchburg's deep history with abolitionism and with speaking up against the slave trade, really to the rest of the world. And I compliment Simone Blake in memoriam, Counselor, our Gardner Counselor colleague, Thibault Munoz, and Dr. Danette Day, for driving this forward. This is a city park. We have got to have city park parking. And I know from having done many, many events at city parks and outdoor places, if you don't have parking, you can't drag in your tables, your tents, your chairs for attendees, and it just makes the whole process that much more difficult. And I really appreciate Councillor Boschman's mention. It's good to know that there's plans in the works for that space, which does need it. But in the interim, it's only 10 spaces. It will be of great benefit, both to park organizers, attendees, and the general public. So I'm very much in support.
Thank you. Commissioner Erickson, do you have anything to add?
Two things to add. So the sidewalk work, well, this whole project essentially is funded in part by CDBG funds. The goal is to try to replace the ADA ramps on both ends of that block on Cherry Street going across, Snow Street going across, what is it? Cherry and Union Streets. Yeah. So we'd have ADA access through that entire block in front of Abolitionist Park. And then, like Sergeant Boudreaux mentioned, putting an ADA ramp right out in front of the park for the 3 handicap spots that we'd be adding on that side. And then paving the shoulder on the opposite side of the street right up to the edge of the right-of-way. The only conflict I could potentially see with the proposed development for that lot across the street is if we required them to put in sidewalks as a condition of their site plan approval. We would ask that those sidewalks be installed within the city layout most likely. So 6-foot sidewalks would occupy a pretty big portion of the space that we're discussing for adding parking in right now. So that might necessitate that developer cutting into that pavement at some point if that development moves forward. But I haven't heard when that is going to start. And I think the last time it was discussed during a planning board meeting was at least a couple of years ago. So it's not like a project that's going to start this year or later this year as far as we know. It could sit for another 5 years or more, depending on where the funding is at. So I think this is a great solution to a need for parking in this area.
And again, would that be something that we've got, that DPW has manpower and money to take care of that in this year? Yes,
it's within the CDBG funds that were allocated, and it was actually for last CDBG year, not this one starting on July 1st. So
that would be 49.
We had hoped to start this project actually last fall, and then we were set back in our schedule because of all the rains that we received in July and September. So it got bumped to the spring. So as soon as we're done with our main street sweeping operations, the goal is to have a crew or 2 start working up there.
Okay. Thank you. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That is approved. All right. Next petition, 04424, Marissa Fleming on behalf of Maritza Rivera of 478 Pearl Street to install a blind driveway sign. This is to ensure oncoming vehicles traveling in both directions of Pearl Street are aware of this hidden driveway. To also change the throughway between the monument and the house from a 2-way street to a 1-way street, entering one way from Pearl Street to Townsend Street. Sergeant Boudreaux.
Council, is this petition, the blind driveway part of this, or portion of it, really doesn't need to be petition form. Any cautionary signs like that just go under either the Chief Martineau's authority or the DPW commissioner. So that portion of this, I did the whole report for both parts of this, but the blind driveway signs really don't need to go in front of the council. So the only thing you would really be looking at as part of this would be if you want to take that small turning lane that's there and that's two-way right now, and make that one-way. I can go in as much detail as you want, or I know I sent my report to all of you, so I don't know if anybody has any questions about the recommendations I made. Obviously, I made some recommendations in there for some signage for that driveway. So if you have any questions for me.
Yeah, I do have a question about the creative signage that we're using. I didn't know that, I mean, do we have in-house availability to make these signs?
We would just order these specific signs. That's pretty much what we've been doing for all of our signs over the past several years, with the exception of street signs.
Okay, so
Street name
we have this sign in place that I thought was quite dramatic, that I've never seen before on a street, but, I mean, I like it for this intersection, this area. So if that's, and again, is that something that could or would maybe warn people coming both directions that this, it's cautionary, right? Like,
Yes.
just use caution.
I have a website that we've bought some signs for the police department from,
Okay,
that I found that sign on. I thought that it was a little different, so I thought it might catch people's eyes.
Yeah.
Now, usually when we do this, because they're cautionary signs, they're not fully under the MUTCD, so you can find a little different variations.
Okay.
Usually what I'll say to the DPW is, where they buy their signs, they may not have that exact one, so we'll go with something that's equivalent to that. But I did see that particular sign, Counselor, and I thought it did catch your eye, and I thought maybe it would be something that might stick out and make somebody really see it.
right. I just didn't know if this was a DPW sign or if this was a police department sign.
It's from a company that, like I said, the police department, we've bought some signs for some of the things that we've done, and it
Okay.
was on their site. Again, the DPW buys from a certain vendor, so they may not have that exact particular sign. They could.
Yeah, our vendor is a company called Permaline.
Okay,
So we would look at their inventory to see what they have that matches that as closely as possible. But we'd be looking for a sign that conveys that message, if not quite as graphically displayed.
well, you know, I like graphics, so,
I mean, unfortunately, we don't have a real sign manufacturing machine at DPW, so we don't manufacture, one-off signs like that. We buy it from our vendor. The only signs that we really make in-house are some of the more homemade signs that you see around town. We made a sign for the stop line over at the Rollstone Street Bridge when you're coming off of the bridge going onto Main Street, for example. So we'll do little signs like that, and then we have the ability to manufacture street name signs that look professional and match our colors and standards. But when it comes to signs like that, we usually just order them.
and have you, I mean, has the police department ever made their catalog available to you to peruse through?
I'm not sure what website they use, but I'd be happy to look through it.
Okay.
I'm sure they have their whole catalog online. Most of these companies do.
Okay. Counselor Van Hazinga.
So I read through your report. Thank you very much, Sergeant. I think your recommendations with the blind drive warning signs and also the clearing the hedges that are obstructing the view make perfect sense to address that issue. The remaining one is that little turnoff on towards Townsend Street. And I was just wondering, have there been any instance of accidents or injuries at that intersection involving on either side?
I did, let me check on my report here. We went back to 1/1 of 2020. Up until the day I did this report, we've had no accidents in that time frame at that intersection.
I will say, just in driving through that area, it is a little awkward because it's not very well, there's not very good signage there to instruct cars what they're supposed to do or what they can't do, and it's sort of, everyone has their own style, I guess, of going through that, or whether or not they use that little cut across. So I'm open to anyone else's opinion about how we handle that, if we keep it the way it is, if it's worthwhile to make it one direction.
Counselor Schultz?
I think it's, I would agree with Sergeant Boudreau. I think we should keep it two-way. That's a very busy area, and it would really, I think, maybe snarl traffic a little bit just to make that one-way at that particular point. It's a very busy area there.
My one fear when I looked at it is if we do that, where the island comes out to a point after it. I think if we restrict people from taking that left, they're going to be trying to take that sharp bend around that, and I think we're going to cause more traffic problems, to be honest with you.
I do have just one other, I guess, question as far as the recommendation was that the property owner should remove the bushes on their property. Who or what department reaches out to the property owner for that suggestion or that recommendation?
That would be up to you, councilors, whether we want to have Councilor Fleming, who brought that, to bring that to their attention. I'm not sure if that was the homeowner or it was a person that, I think they might have rental in that particular house. I don't have a problem speaking to someone if I get a name of who we should speak to, or that was just a suggestion. We can't make people cut bushes unless we take them to court on their own property. If it was hanging out into the city's property, I think we could do more, Commissioner, if I'm correct. But that's just a recommendation I'm making to them. Part of the problem of the blind driveway is the bushes on their own property. But we can't, like I said, we can't make them cut those unless the city wanted to take them to court. And the problem really is only for themselves. They're not, if this was on a corner and it was blocking other people from seeing, I might be saying we probably should be sending it to the solicitor, but this is just causing a problem for them in their own driveway. So that was just a suggestion I made.
Councilor Fleming, where this was brought up you from the, I'm not sure if Ms. Rivera, 478 Pearl Street, because that's the property that we're talking about that has the bushes, owner, occupied, renter. I mean, I don't know if you have a relationship with her, if you want to reach out with the recommendation about trimming the bushes would be less detrimental if she's, worried about an accident or pulling in or out of her blind driveway.
Yeah, I assume she was the owner, because she brought it to my attention, and I did let her know about this meeting this evening, so I don't know if she's watching it.
Okay.
But I will certainly reach out to her. And can I send her that report, via? Can I send her that full report? Okay, I'll send her the full report. Yeah, okay, I will send her the report.
All right. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve with that change of the signage not being part of the petition.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Any
So-
discussion?
I'm sorry, so the motion is to make the two-way street that turn off into a one-way. Is that what you're proposing? Because I thought you spoke against that.
I spoke against that, yeah. Yeah, so
So-
that's the only part we really have to, yeah.
So I think if you're not.
We need to,
supportive
we
that
need to
you-
amend it then,
Well,
or to give it leave to withdraw.
so I think leave to withdraw maybe if you don't want to enact that portion of it because the police department can enact the signage on their own without our petition.
Right.
So it's not needed.
And we
And if
can't
you
do
don't want
anything
to
about
change
the
that,
bush, so
it's probably better to just give it leave
leave
to
to
withdraw.
withdraw. I'll make a motion to give it leave to withdraw.
Second.
Okay, second. Okay, so I just want to be clear that then we're giving leave to withdraw that second about changing throughway between the monument and the house from a two-way to a one-way. That's the part that we're giving leave to withdraw?
I think he's motioning for the whole item.
The whole thing, because we don't even need the first sentence.
Okay, Sergeant Boudreau.
The signage part,
Yeah.
Chief Martineau has already signed off, so that will get done regardless of how you vote on the turning lane.
Okay, so before us, we have a leave to withdraw as it stands. Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, that's unanimous for leave to withdraw. Next is 045-24, Councilor Mercer Fleming and Beth Walsh on behalf of Lisa Bailey to install additional stop signs at the intersection of Billing Roads and Arnhow Farm Road to make the intersection of Billing Road and Arnhow Farm Road a three-way stop. Sergeant Boudreau.
Councilors, this particular intersection, the commissioner and I had looked at this intersection, was about a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
Roughly that. Another homeowner from up there had some issues. We looked at that, and the DPW, we came up with a plan to put some signage that has been changed up there. I went up and re-looked at the intersection when I did this report. A couple of the signs that we put up, I think we could move them into maybe a little better spots, which will help a little. I made some recommendations for some additional signage. As for a two-way or three-way stop, as we know, we follow the MUTCD guidelines. That does not, it needs an engineering study to put a two or three-way stop. It does not fall under any of the guidelines up there. And I have them all listed, what we would need. Again, we would have to do an engineering study if we were going to add a two or a third stop up there. We all know that those can be anywhere from $8,000 to whatever it might be, $15,000, $20,000. I would recommend against doing that because it's not going to fall under any of the warrants. I think we'd be wasting city money by doing that engineering study. I have made some suggestions from a little bit of additional signage, some moving some of the signage that's up there around that I think would help with that intersection. I also made a recommendation that there's, we get a lot of brush up there, but there's also, if you're heading outbound, and where Billings splits off from Arnhow, on Arnhow there's like an earthen mound on the side of the road. With the elevation of that and then the weeds and everything growing on top of it, it makes it very difficult for the DPW to go up there and trim it as much as they would have to. I think, we don't know if that's possible yet. I asked the engineering department to look. If any of that is in our city right away, long term, I would love to see if we could pull some of that mound out so that it would open up that intersection and change the sight lines. And all of these things we're talking about where people can't see coming each way, we would solve all those problems with sight lines. I can't tell you that that will be done until engineering gets a chance to go up there and really look at this and see what the actual city right-of-way is up there. Other than that, we would have to talk to the homeowner about removing that. So I can't tell you that part will go. What I can tell you is I don't believe that this would pass an engineering study for a two- or three-way stop. So our next best thing is to try to add and move some signage around. And again, the signage does not need the council approval. The chief has signed off on that signage, so that's going to get done also. So what would be before you would be doing an engineering study going forward for a two- or three-way stop.
Councillor Fleming, you want to come to the podium?
I guess my concern is the bulk of the traffic is during the school year. And I think people are usually in a rush. And I think having a stop sign there would force the driver, whether young or old, to make that stop. I think by just changing signage, or they're still going to glide through. I think they're not going to see a stop sign. I'm just going to say, I've got it and I'm going to go. So I'm not saying we can't try this. I'll try anything, but if we don't see an improvement up there, might I be able to come back to file that petition for those stop signs for that engineering study?
I mean, I'm sorry, we're asking.
Yes, you guys.
Council, you can file a petition anytime.
Yeah, I would agree. But just looking at the intersection without having conducted actual vehicle counts, traffic counts, you can generally assume the different volumes just based on the nature of the connectivity of the two roads. So you've got Arnhow Farm that leads up into New Hampshire, and then you've got Billings Road, which is a dead end. Billings Road really is only used by the residents of Billings Road, whereas Arnhow Farm is used by people going to and from Ashby State to New Hampshire, plus the residents that live there, plus students that go up and down the road. So one of the things that you look at in an engineering study like this is the different volumes on the two roads that are feeding the intersection. And really the only way to justify the addition of a stop sign for a two-way or three-way stop like this would be to have equal volumes of traffic on all legs of the intersection, and we just don't have that here. So I'm fairly confident that if we paid an engineering consultant with a professional engineering stamp with traffic as their main area of specialty, they would probably come to the same conclusion. So I agree with Sergeant Boudreau that if we spend the money to do that study, it's likely going to lead us to a recommendation to maintain status quo and add the signage that we're recommending adding anyways. So my suggestion would be to try and see what this does for us. I really like the idea of trying to improve sightlines by digging that embankment back. So we've got to figure out if that's private property or city property that we have to work with. And I think if we're able to do that, it's going to solve the issue versus, going through an engineering study, spending a bunch of money, and then coming up with the same conclusions. So.
Thank you.
I do have a question about the drawing in the report, a tree partially blocking the stop sign, and it denotes S918. Is that on private property? So is that city-owned or is that homeowner-owned? Or we don't really know?
It's close enough to the road that I think it might be in the city's right-of-way. But I can't say that for certain. We'd have to go up there with engineering and figure out where the center line is and how many feet we have. At the very least, looking at it, I think if we cut just the branches, that might take care of the stop sign. Or we might just be able to move that stop sign a little bit to get it out where you'll be able to see it past that tree.
Okay. And that's doable within the purview of DPW without doing an engineering study?
Correct. We can have the engineering division go out and mark out the edge of the right-of-way. That's no problem. I believe we have decent plans there. Assuming we can find a stone bound to tie into, we should be able to do that. That'll help us determine whether we can remove that embankment on the Arnhow Farm Road side, or whether we can remove that tree over on the Billings Road side. I think I know who owns the property adjacent to that tree if it happens to be on private property, so we could have a conversation with that person. And then I was looking in the assessor's database today, and I believe the property where the embankment might be located is Ralph Romano, who's a former city councilor, currently works for Mass DOT. So we could also approach him if that mound does happen to be on his property with a proposal and see what his thoughts are. So I'm fairly confident we can take care of most of the recommendations in Sergeant Bujo's report without having to do an engineering study.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Schultz.
Yeah, I agree with Sergeant Boudreau that we should look first at the signage and also trimming back the brush. And I also had a question about, it's the same question Councilor Van Hazinger asked earlier about the John Fitch Highway, North Street, Pearl Hill Road section. Have there been a rash of accidents there recently, or do you have any data on that, Sergeant?
Yeah, I actually did the same that I did for the other report. We went back to 1/1 of 2020 until the day of the report. We've had no accidents in that intersection in that time frame.
Thank you.
You have leave to withdraw?
I second that.
I have a motion and second to give the petition leave to withdraw. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. No other business? We are adjourned. Thank you.